Hey everybody, Ryan here at eTrailer. Today on our 2003 Coachmen Cross Country Motorhome, we're going to be showing you how to install the Demco Air Force One supplemental braking system. And this is going to give us the parts for just the motorhome side. But before we get into the install, why don't we just kind of talk about it, check it out, and make sure that this is something that you're going to need. With this particular kit, it's going to come with all the stuff that you need to get just your motorhome side set up to be able to tow a vehicle that has the Air Force One braking system. So this is kind of a special circumstance almost. If you're looking for the complete package, the motorhome side as well as the vehicle side, we do carry that. So check into that if that's what you're looking for. But there's a few scenarios that I can personally think of on where this kit would come into play. Probably one of the more popular ones being you changed motorhomes, right? So you already had a similar setup, flat towing your vehicle, and you get a new motorhome. And instead of having to buy that whole kit again, you can just get the motorhome side and get all them parts on there, save you some time, a few bucks, and get back on the road again. Another thing potentially is maybe something's damaged. Maybe it's sat for a long time and things just just got wore out. You could always use it as to update the kit that's currently on there, being an older Air Force One motorhome side kit. So that's always another thing. Or maybe let's say you have a motorhome like this with air brakes and you've never flat towed before. Maybe you have a buddy or a friend that sold you a vehicle that has that Air Force One vehicle side on it already, and they've had good luck with it, and that's what you want to use. You could always just get the motorhome side, and that would solve your problem and allow everything to pair up and work the way it should. Other than that though, there's really not a whole lot to the kit. It's going to come with everything you need to get it put on your motorhome, all the air fittings, a tank, some air line and things of that nature. So you'll be covered there. In terms of what this side's actually going to do is it's going to tap into your motorhome's air system, and there's going to be a small tank, almost like a reserve air tank, and that's going to be full of pressurized air, right, when you're flat towing your vehicle. And whenever you apply the brakes in the motorhome, that tank is going to disperse air, shoot air back through the lines, through the fittings, into the Air Force One on your vehicle side. That's already there. And that air pressure is going to hit the brakes in your towed vehicle. That way everything comes to a safe stop. And so in terms of permanent type braking systems as a whole, when it comes to ones for motorhomes with air brakes, the Air Force One's definitely my top pick. Really simple system, really reliable, and it just flat out works, and it's truly proportional braking system too. I'm referencing this as the whole package. So whenever you apply the brakes in the motorhome, that braking pressure is going to be matched by your towed vehicle. So overall, it just creates a really smooth and predictable stopping experience. At the end of the day, though, if you're looking for a kit that is just for the motorhome side, this is definitely the setup that you're going to need. As far as the installation goes, really not too bad. I know it can be a little intimidating working on these things, especially with the airlines and everything else, but once you're under there, everything's somewhat easy to get to, and it's not really complicated. The biggest pain is just having to run your lines and things like that, just because not a ton of space. But set aside a little bit of time. This is something that you can definitely get done. Speaking of that, though, if you'd like to follow along, feel free to hang around. We'll go ahead and set everything up together now. To begin our installation on our motorhome, we're going to be working underneath it, and usually just in front of the rear axle. So that's where we're going to be. Keep in mind, you don't have to have a lift or anything to get this done. You can get under there and do this, but so we can actually see what's going on, I decided to put it up in the air. That way we can have a good look at it. So underneath the motorhome, in front of our rear axle, first thing that you're going to want to do is mount up the tank, and it actually worked out real good. There's a couple of bolts that were holding a factory bracket on, so I just took them out. I got some longer bolts and used that attachment point to actually mount up our tank. So that's where that is. Then we're going to have 3 airlines that we need to hook up. So this one here is going to go to our supply line, which we'll get to in a minute. This one here is going to go to our metered air. And this one is going to run all the way to the back to our fitting. And here in a moment, I'll show you how to plug these lines in and cut them and everything else. So if you're unsure, just wait a moment. But with that said, let's focus on our supply line and our metered air line. These are going to run essentially just maybe a foot or two towards the back and up where we have them connected to our motorhome's factory airlines. About a foot ahead of where we mounted our tank, this is where we're going to tap into the factory line. So we have our metered air line, which is this one here. That's generally the smaller line, which is this one here. And a way you can check is if you unplug the line, you should only get air pressure coming out of it whenever you apply the brakes in the motorhome. You cut the factory line in half, use the included tee it in, plug in the airline from our metered air port on our tank. When you do that, sometimes the factory lines will be dirty, just kind of have some gritty stuff on them. Make sure you wipe them down, get them smooth and clean. The next one will be our supply line. So we routed our line over from the tank. The supply line is this big green line there. Did it the same way, cut it in half, teed everything in. With the supply line though, make sure that you drain your tanks in the motorhome. That way it don't have air pressure and you cut it and it goes wild. To drain the tanks, you can always, what I usually do is just get inside of the motorhome and hit the brakes a bunch of times to deplete all the air. But once these are hooked up, now we have one more line that comes off of our tank that we installed that'll run towards the back of our RV where it's connected to a fitting. Now at the back of our motorhome, I ran that airline that was up there from our tank. When you route this, obviously, you don't want any kinks in it or run it next to hot or moving parts. And that's going to get connected to this fitting. So our fitting here, I just drilled a couple holes, bolted it in place where we can get to it. So the way all these fittings work, they're quick connects. And what you want to do when you cut these lines is you don't want to use a regular pair of snips. You want to use something like this or even just a razor edge, or they actually make tubing cutting tools you can use. But when you cut it, you want to make sure that it's a clean cut and it's straight. That way we don't develop any leaks. And with these just being a quick connect tight, you simply just push them right into place there. So once you have everything hooked up, it's not a bad idea to actually start up the motorhome, let it build full air pressure, and once it does, turn it off. And we're going to do this so we can check for any air leaks. Generally speaking, if you have one, it should be pretty loud. You should be able to hear it and identify it. You can kind of go a step further and get some soapy water and spray down all the fittings that we worked with. If you see any bubbles continuing to develop, you have an air leak. I checked ours, we're in really good shape, no leaks. If you were to have a leak, what you would do, let all the air out of the system again, disconnect the line or from the fitting that's leaking, recut it, plug it back in, and go through that process again until you're confident that you don't have any air leaks. And that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the Demco Air Force One supplemental braking system for just the motorhome side on our 2003 Coachmen Cross Country Motorhome.